All of my news is open book. Anyone can be aware of. Does not matter.
I have no news. I have been trying to leave the house at least 5 days a week, and I did not succeed this week because of the snow. So
It's so
nothing
cold.
has happened. It's been so cold. It snowed a crap ton. It's snowing right now here.
I never asked you how your staycation went.
Oh, it was lovely.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was quite good. I had a delicious meal with the best bread pudding I've ever had in my life. It was
Ooh.
salted caramel bread pudding with candied pecans and French vanilla ice cream. And they served it in like a little cast iron, so it was hot in the cold. And oh, it was so good.
Where was
Oh my
this?
gosh. This was at Corinne downtown. It two different staff members stopped at my table when they saw me eating it to be like, "That's my favorite dessert," and I was like, "I can see why. It's amazing."
Get it.
So yeah,
I've
I'm
got.
not sharing.
Hang on. Do. All right. So, not exactly the first three locations of the unofficial walk to Mordor because, um, for reasons. But we got Woodhull.
Woodhull. Excellent.
And we've got Bamfurlong, which is the name of Farmer Maggot's farm.
Mm-hmm. Your shortcut to mushrooms.
And we've got I don't know if you can read it.
Prancing Pony. Nazgul free since 1490.
20, but yep. And
20.
yes.
That part I can't see very well on the screen.
Right? Yeah, it's a little clearer in person. Yeah, it's clearer in person. So I just I've finished another couple since I got these printed. And Crick Hollow was made me very unhappy. The word Crick Hollow, I didn't like the font. So I redid the font and then kind of spliced it in there. And in fact, the top half of Tom Bombadil's house didn't work for me either. So I fixed both of those. So now they're done. And
Good.
I'm working on the weather top that I showed you, which the internet hasn't seen. There's going to be little figures, like little Gandalf figure and little Nazgul figures, because he totally fought them with fireworks and then had to run. And that's like an implied scene in the book, which amuses me. I want to do the implied scenes more than the ones that we actually get to be there for.
Well, everyone's done the ones that we get to be there for.
Right? And do I still where? Oh.
Ah!
Sorry.
I'm here. I just wasn't expecting that.
My sketchbook was under my tablet.
Uh-huh. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and it's got a triangle in it. But I've been practicing my
nice lettering. Ah, I love it.
Right? Freaking typography is the best.
There's a book that I just read that you might enjoy. It's a romance novel called Love Lettering, and the main character is a like hand lettering artist who lives in New York and gets her inspiration from the signs around New York.
Oh, nice. That sounds
adorable.
Very sweet. I am currently in the middle of Susan Cooper.
Lovely.
I have made it as far as the Grey King. She's awesome. She's just awesome. I always remember, like, Oversea Understone is a bit of a slog because the children are morons.
I mean, yes.
And every single thing they do is just over the top stupid. Not even naive stupid, but they have a conversation where they're like, the bad guys are here, we should be careful. And 2 minutes later, they're opening the map. Like, can you please take your own advice? Ah.
I get Oversea Understone confused with A String and the Harp, which is not a Susan Cooper book.
Right? That's a completely different.
It is, but it takes place in Wales.
Oh, yep. And Great King takes place in Wales. Oversea Understone and Greenwich are Cornwall.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how much smarter they feel in Greenwich. Like things move a lot faster, and the plot does not require that they make any egregious mistakes. The only one they do is to go into the caravan of the villain when they know he's the villain. But that one's, it almost even makes sense, because if you're already kind of hypnotized and you're like, well, I know he's a villain, so I'll just not trust him. So there's nothing he can do to me.
Yes. How many very dysfunctional relationships begin?
Oh, there it is. Okay. My table is such a mess right now because I have about half of it set up to do resin pours.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other half is all watercolors. And so anything else I do. Oh, I didn't show you this though. So you know that in order to do the stencily thing, I've been just taking
yeah, painter's tape.
Painter's
you showed me last week.
Did I show you these?
No. Oh, that is satisfying.
This is the painter's tape I use now, and I just right across, and I don't have to deal with it overlapping. I don't have to try to cut through thicker bits, and it's just really nice. But the only problem with it is it does tear the paper if I leave it on too long or if I'm not careful. So I just need to be super duper careful all the time, or be prepared to fix it in post.
Indeed. Well, while we're showing things, let me turn on my backlight here and show you what I'm working on. One moment. I don't want to have the camera on my face because it gets bright. Okay, so here we have a slightly disemboweled sewing machine.
So it is.
And so
I recognize that bit.
Yeah, so this is this is the tension thing right here. This is one of the bits for the thread to go through. This is the needle bar coming down right here. So this is where you would put the needle.
Okay.
This is the presser foot lever back here. And then the presser bar is what's disassembled on the table right now.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to be cleaning today on account of it's kind of a little bit grody and has old oil and grease on it.
Fair enough.
It's not going to be as satisfying as if I wanted to take the motor off the back. You can't really see, I don't think, but I wanted to take the motor off the back, but I could not because I don't have the right screwdriver. And everything I've read says if you strip the screws, your life is over. Mourning, wailing, gnashing of teeth. So I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
But I do have some nice, let's see. I have some rubbing alcohol.
Excellent.
And my nerdy crafter tools.
Yeah.
And some Q-tips, and that's what we're going to do.
All right. And then oil it up again afterwards because you don't want it to seize.
Well, right now it is not in a position where it could possibly seize on account of the motor is disconnected, and so is all of the everything. Right. So I will oil it up before I use it.
That's what I meant.
Also, yes, definitely before I use it. Also, this is the faceplate. Isn't it pretty?
It's so pretty.
Right?
Oh my goodness. What year is it from?
1940.
Beautiful.
Right? Just lovely. Love it. Although I did have a thought, probably not for the faceplate, but like the motor cover is all dented and rusty, and I was like, maybe we could, if it doesn't get too hot during operation, we could pour a resin one, and then you could see the motor working. Wouldn't that be cool?
So cool.
Because I need to do like, okay, let's go back to my face for a second. So I need to do a bunch, like this needs a lot of work. And part of that is going to be that it needs some like paint and enamel replaced. And so I was thinking of doing like some cool gradient stuff and making it a little cyberpunk.
Love it. I love it. Do it.
I think it'd be pretty cool. And also like a little bit Kintsugi-ish, like really emphasize where the repairs are.
Oh yeah, that's the word. Okay, yeah. We yesterday we were at Home Depot, and at some point this building has suffered some severe subsidence, and the aisle we were in had these cracks going along the floor about an inch wide with silicone in them. And we were like, this is a lot like, and then neither of us could remember. Like, we were both like, the Japanese with the bright gold, but except this is stupid and gold would be gorgeous.
Yes, yes, exactly. So yeah, so I'm thinking like, because there's some decently large chunks that are missing the enamel, and I'm like, I have an airbrush, so I can get some enamel paint to airbrush it with, and then do like tape it off, do a gradient, and then edge it with gold.
I love it.
I think it's going to be really cool. This is a long ass project, but you know what? It's fun, and it's really satisfying cleaning gross old machine parts. Like,
speaking of gross and old, though, it was never satisfying cleaning our gross old sink, and this week with a new sink has been so amazing. On Tuesday, I washed all the hand washables, and I didn't spray any water on myself because I wasn't wrestling with that edge and then the double sink and stuff. Like, it was so easy, and I was like, oh, the problem wasn't me.
Yeah, no, that checks out.
Right.
Actually, I have never used your sink without spraying water on myself, but I bet I can use the new sink.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And it's got almost zero clearance around the edge. Like, it's just, you can wipe water right back into it.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And one big tub. Like, and I was like, I'm going to miss having a smaller tub. I don't. I also anticipated not wanting to use the silicone insert for the bottom. There's like a mat. It's got holes in it, like water, but it's brilliant. I never want to be without it again. It means that every dish you put in there just goes clunk instead of crack. So
I was thinking that, plus it'll kind of drain away any like bits of stuff so that you don't have to shove your fingers in them when you're trying to pick up a dish to put it in the dishwasher.
Exactly.
I want one of those.
And it's easy to clean, and it's dishwasher safe if it ever gets mucky. So like everything about it is so nice. And it means that things don't slide. Sometimes I'll put a baking sheet in there and I was expecting it to be like shunk. Nope, no sliding.
I definitely need one of those. Oh, if we're talking about clever kitchen solutions, let me show you. Do you see my dish drainer on the wall back there?
I do. That's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that because my kitchen's so tiny.
Do you have your tea shelf up yet?
No, I need to hang that this weekend.
Yeah.
But it needed the drill, so I keep getting it out at times when I can't drill because it's like, 1 a.m. and being like, shit.
Your neighbors might be unhappy.
They would not appreciate it.
Damn it, neighbors. I can drill at 1 a.m. Only people to object are my children.
You're like a cat in an Eddie Izzard skit. You drill for gold, drill for oil, just for the love of drilling.
All right, where the hell were we?
Ooh, that's a good question. We were past the bit where the tracker orc and the other orc like kill each other.
Right.
And they were up to the break in the mountains.
Oh my.
I might have to go get my book. I don't think we were at the end of a section.
Okay.
Let me go get my book.
But yeah.
Land of Shadow.
Hmm.
So it's right after so they get to the trough between the mountains and they're looking across and being like, oh my god, we're never gonna get that. We're never gonna get there. We have to take the road. And then it's, before you start any more plotting, you need sleep and food, Mr. Frodo. Come and take what you can get of them.
Okay. They hadn't taken the road yet.
They have not taken the road yet. No, they're resting before they take the road. It's like a page before the end of the chapter.
Okay.
Camera shot here. Okay.
Had Sam gone off to get water? Hang on.
I don't think he did yet. He made Frodo. We're at the point where he's about to make Frodo lay down and eat an extra little bit of lembas, but we didn't actually read that part.
Okay. Have you any notion? To plot it along. Trudging to trudge?
Trudging to trudge. We definitely did that bit. I remember that distinctly.
Damn it. Oh, I can't find it.
It's after trudging.
It's after trudging. How long will it take?
Shit. Hang on, let me see.
Frodo raised himself, eating trouble him the most. 12 leagues north of the bridge, to say nothing of blah blah blah.
Yep.
Oh! I can't dash. Sam will just plod along after you. Before you start any more plotting, you need sleep and food, Mr. Frodo.
That is indeed exactly where we are, yes.
Come and take what you can get of them. Oh, man. Don't know why that took me forever. I kept glancing over it.
It'll happen sometimes.
He gave Frodo water and an additional wafer of the way bread, and he made a pillow of his cloak for his master's head. Frodo was too weary to debate the matter, and Sam did not tell him that he had drunk the last drop of their water and eaten Sam's share of the food as well as his own. When Frodo was asleep, Sam bent over him and listened to his breathing and scanned his face. It was lined and thin, and yet in sleep it looked content and unafraid. Well, here goes, master, Sam muttered to himself. I'll have to leave you for a bit and trust to luck. Water we must have, or we'll get no further. Sam crept out, and flitting from stone to stone with more than hobbit care, he went down to the watercourse, and then followed it for some way as it climbed north until he came to the rock steps, where long ago, no doubt, its spring had come gushing down in a little waterfall. All now seemed dry and silent. But refusing to despair, Sam stooped and listened, and to his delight he caught the sound of trickling. Clambering a few steps up, he found a tiny stream of dark water that came out from the hillside and filled a little bare pool, from which again it spilled and vanished then under the barren stones. Sam tasted the water, and it seemed good enough. Then he drank deeply, refilled the bottle, and turned to go back. At that moment he caught a glimpse of a black form or shadow flitting among the rocks away near Frodo's hiding place. Biting back a cry, he leaped down from the spring and ran, jumping from stone to stone. It was a wary creature, difficult to see, but Sam had little doubt about it. He longed to get his hands on its neck, but it heard him coming and slipped quickly away. Sam thought he saw a last fleeting glimpse of it, peering back over the edge of the eastward precipice before it ducked and disappeared. The eastward precipice was sheer, so Gollum's clinging to a wall right now, which we know he can do.
I was going to say, that's a very Gollum-y thing to do. It's in character.
Totally in character, totally believable, but also he probably looks like a gecko from the other side.
A really ugly gecko.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody walking by is like, what's wrong with that lizard?
Has no tail.
Which is what I always say, not what's wrong with that lizard, but every time I see a raccoon, my first thought is always, oh, that's a fucked up cat.
In the summertime, the raccoons fight in our neighbor's backyard, and they sound like hogs.
Yeah, I believe that.
Like really angry hogs. Well, luck did not let me down, muttered Sam. But that was a near thing. Isn't it enough to have orcs by the thousand without that stinking villain come nosing round? I wish he had been shot. He sat down by Frodo and did not rouse him, but he did not dare to go to sleep himself. At last, when he felt his eyes closing and knew that his struggle to keep awake could not go on much longer, he wakened Frodo gently. That Gollum's about again, I'm afraid, Mr. Frodo, he said. Leastways, if it wasn't him, then there's two of him. Oh, there you are.
What?
I was hearing a licking noise, and it's the cat in my sewing chair.
Ah.
The noise, your machine noises are kind of loud in the mic. I don't know if...
Let me mute them then.
Okay. And you can always unmute when you have something to add.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. That Gollum's about again, I'm afraid, Mr. Frodo, he said. Leastways, if it wasn't him, then there's two of him. I went away to find some water and spied him nosing round just as I turned back. I reckon it isn't safe for us both to sleep together. I'm begging your pardon, but I can't hold up my lids much longer. Bless you, Sam, said Frodo. Lie down and take your proper turn. But I'd rather have Gollum than orcs. At any rate, he won't give us away to them. Not unless he's caught himself. But he might do a bit of robbery and murder on his own, growled Sam. Keep your eyes open, Mr. Frodo. There's a bottle full of water. Drink up. We can fill it again when we go on. With that, Sam plunged into sleep. Light was fading again when he woke. Frodo sat propped against the rock behind, but he had fallen asleep. The water bottle was empty. There was no sign of Gollum. Mordor dark had returned, and the watchfires on the heights burned fierce and red when the hobbits set out on the most dangerous stage of all their journey. They went first to the little spring, and then climbing warily up, they came to the road, at the point where it swung east toward the Eisenmouth, 20 miles away. It was not a broad road, and it had no wall or parapet along the edge, and as it ran on, the sheer drop from its brink became deeper and deeper. The cat is staring at the door, willing it open. Who am I to deny his Jedi powers? Goodbye, sir. The hobbits could hear no movements, and after listening for a while, they set off eastward at a steady pace. After doing some 12 miles, they halted A short way back the road had bent a little northward, and the stretch that they had passed over was now screened from sight. This proved disastrous. They rested for some minutes and then went on. But they had not taken many steps when suddenly in the stillness of the night they heard the sound that all along they had secretly dreaded, the noise of marching feet. It was still some way behind them, but looking back they could see the twinkle of torches coming round the bend less than a mile away, and they were moving fast. Too fast for Frodo to escape by flight along the road ahead. "I feared it, Sam," said Frodo. "We've trusted to luck, and it has failed us. We're trapped." He looked wildly up at the frowning wall where the road builders of old had cut the rock sheer for many fathoms above their heads. He ran to the other side and looked over the brink into a dark pit of gloom. "We're trapped at last," he said. He sank to the ground beneath the wall of rock and bowed his head. "Seems so," said Sam. "Well, we can but wait and see." And with that he sat down beside Frodo under the shadow of the cliff. They did not have to wait long. The orcs were going at a great pace. Those in the foremost files bore torches. On they came, red flames in the dark, swiftly growing. Now Sam, too, bowed his head, hoping that it would hide his face when the torches reached them, and he set their shields before their knees to hide their feet. If only they are in a hurry and will let a couple of tired soldiers alone and pass on, he thought. And so it seemed that they would. The leading orcs came loping along, panting, holding their heads down. They were a gang of the smaller breeds, being driven unwilling to their Dark Lord's wars. All they cared for was to get the march over and escape the whip. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. All they cared for was to run and escape the whip. Beside them, running up and down the line, were two of the large, fierce Uruks, cracking lashes and shouting. File after file passed, and the telltale torchlight was already some way ahead. Sam held his breath. Now more than half the line had gone by. Then suddenly one of the slave drivers spied the two figures by the roadside. He flicked a whip at them and yelled, "Hi, you! Get up!" They did not answer, and with a shout he halted the whole company. "Come on, you slugs!" he cried. "This is no time for slouching." He took a step towards them, and even in the gloom he recognized the devices on their shields. "Deserting, eh?" he snarled. "Or thinking of it? All your folks should have been inside Udun before yesterday evening. You know that. Up you get and fall in, or I'll have your numbers and report you." So here's the thing. The different companies have different devices on their shields.
Yes.
But they're all the eye. So are some of the eyes red and some yellow, or some looking left, some to the right? Like, because that is some aesthetic awesomeness if it's true. Or is there just like writing on it as well?
I like the idea that the eyes are slightly different.
Right?
That'd be cool. Like
Yeah.
some of them are narrowed.
Some have a really thin slit pupil, some a wider slit pupil.
Mm-hmm. Some have like a goat pupil that's horizontal.
Ooh.
All kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And then when you have a whole army of them together, it just looks fucking terrifying because there's eyes like.
Yeah, because the eyes, when all the companies are together, the eye sees everything. It's facing in all directions.
I love it. Yep. When you're going to be a Dark Lord, you have to think of these things.
There's no point in being a Dark Lord if you ain't got style.
Exactly. They struggled to their feet, and keeping bent, limping like footsore soldiers, they shuffled back toward the rear of the line. "No, not at the rear," the slave driver shouted. "3 files up, and stay there or you'll know it when I come down the line." He sent his long whiplash cracking over their heads. Then, with another crack and a yell, he started the company off again at a brisk trot. It was hard enough for poor Sam, tired as he was, but for Frodo it was a torment, and soon a nightmare. He set his teeth and tried to stop his mind from thinking, and he struggled on. The stench of the sweating orcs about him was stifling, and he began to gasp with thirst. On they went, and he bent all his will to draw his breath and make his legs keep going. And yet to what evil end he toiled and endured he did not dare to think. There was no hope of falling out unseen. Now and again the orc driver fell back and jeered at them. "There now," he laughed, flicking at their legs. "Where there's a whip, there's a will, my slugs." "Hold up. I'd give you a nice freshener now, only you'll get as much lash as your skins will carry when you come in late to your camp. Do you good. Don't you know we're at war?" They had gone some miles, and the road was at last running down a long slope into the plain, when Frodo's strength began to give out and his will wavered. He lurched and stumbled. Desperately, Sam tried to help him and hold him up, though he felt that he could himself hardly stay the pace much longer. At any moment now he knew that the end would come. His master would faint or fall, and all would be discovered, and their bitter efforts be in vain. "I'll have that big slave-driving devil anyway," he thought. Silver lining.
Typical Sam.
Right? Then, just as he was putting his hand to the hilt of his sword, there came an unexpected relief. They were out on the plain now and drawing near the entrance to Udun. Some way in front of it, before the gate at the bridge end, the road from the west converged with others coming from the south and from Barad-dûr. Along all the roads troops were moving, for the captains of the west were advancing, and the Dark Lord was speeding his forces north. So it chanced that several companies came together at the road meeting in the dark beyond the light of the watchfires on the wall. And at once there was great jostling and cursing as each troop tried to get first to the gate in the ending of their march. Though the drivers yelled and plied their whips, scuffles broke out and some blades were drawn. A troop of heavy-armed Uruks from Barad-dûr charged into the Durthang line and threw them into confusion. Dazed as he was with pain and weariness, Sam woke up, grasped quickly at his chance, and threw himself to the ground, dragging Frodo down with him. Orcs fell over them, snarling and cursing. Slowly, on hand and knee, the hobbits crawled away out of the turmoil until at last, unnoticed, they dropped over the further edge of the road. It had a high curb by which troop leaders could guide themselves in black night or fog. I would love to see fog in Mordor.
They say fog, but it would really be smog.
It would be smog. It would choke you. And it was banked up some feet above the level of the open land. Oh, no, high curb by which troop leaders go. Yep, banked up. They lay still for a while. It was too dark to seek for cover, if indeed there was any to find. But Sam felt that they ought at least to get further away from the highway and out of the range of torchlight. "Come on, Mr. Frodo," he whispered. "One more crawl, and then you can lie still." With a last despairing effort, Frodo raised himself on his hands and struggled on for maybe 20 yards. Then he pitched down into a shallow pit that opened unexpectedly before them, and there he lay like a dead thing. Oh. I mean, you see what you expect to see, right? So the slave-driving Uruks weren't looking for hobbit feet or
Yeah, no, not even a little bit. Plus,
Not
it was dark and they were looking at them by torchlight.
right.
So unless something had drawn their attention, they probably wouldn't have noticed anyway. But yeah, they hadn't even heard that there was a spy to be looking for.
That's
They
right.
weren't on the
They weren't
Sauron
in the
didn't
loop,
tell anybody about that he didn't have to.
right? They were not in the loop. It's always also always amused me somewhat that part of what defines evil for Tolkien is that they numbered people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a little on the nose.
A little on the nose.
Although
Yeah,
it's also an army thing, right? Like evil or not, armies tend to number people.
it's true. Yeah. Yeah.
I would assume that that was the same in his time. I don't know, but I mean, you could also make an argument that there's not a not evil army, and I would probably agree with you on that.
Right? Um it's awfully hard for an army to be even when they're in a good cause, the acts they're doing, they're not made to do any acts that aren't
Violent.
violent. Yeah.
Yep.
Um I'm like you don't I guess you do if you need to like you don't get the army in if you need to rebuild a bridge. You get contractors in
Yeah.
or put out a fire.
Yeah,
Like,
you use firefighters for that.
right? Like army's purpose is a violent purpose and that can be ethically excused if you're I don't know defending the children of Ukraine from
Indeed.
invaders.
Yes. But if the invaders had not invaded with their army, you wouldn't need your army. So violence
Yeah,
begets only more violence, etc.
etc. Evil begets evil, Mr. President. Oh, I didn't put any lotion on my nubular eczema when I showered yesterday, so it's like
Mm-hmm.
it scabs up and then the scab peels, and it's just
Ah,
itchy and unpleasant.
that is so unpleasant. I'm sorry.
Right? Although, I mean, I'm just telling you and the whole internet, but it's secretly strangely satisfying to be picking a scab. That is the
I mean,
same
there.
scab.
Yes, I think the world knows that picking scabs can be very satisfying.
It's true. it I wish Sauron hadn't been destroyed before he learned exactly how close to being caught Frodo was over and over and over. Like, if you just communicated to your people, but you didn't do that because you don't think they're good enough.
Evil holds the seeds of its own destruction and such.
And such. Chapter 3 Mount Doom!
Doom, 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 doom. This is. This does this spring look better to you? Well, you can't see it. Never mind. It
Yeah,
looks better.
fuzzy.
Trust me on that.
Okay, it looks better.
Yes, it's still a bit like it's still a little bit tarnishy, but it's not bad compared to what it was. You can see the number of Q-tips that went into making that effect.
Oh dear God, it's like watching Baumgartner.
It is. I've really felt like Baumgartner. So I was cleaning off the. Hang on. I was cleaning off this bit, which is the hand wheel,
Yep.
and all of these little like threads were just completely gross and soaked in oil, and I was scrubbing at them with Q-tips and just being like, I am so Baumgartner right now.
Sam put his ragged orc cloak under his master's head and covered them both with the grey robe of Lorien. And as he did so, his thoughts went out to that fair land and to the elves, and he hoped that the cloth woven by their hands might have some virtue to keep them hidden beyond all hope in this wilderness of fear. He heard the scuffling and cries die down as the troops passed on through the Eisenmouth. It seemed that in the confusion and the mingling of many companies of various kinds, they had not been missed. Not yet, at any rate. Sam took a sip of water, but pressed Frodo to drink, and when his master had recovered a little, he gave him a whole wafer of their precious whey bread, and made him eat it. Then, too worn out even to feel much fear, they stretched themselves out. They slept a little in uneasy fits, for their sweat grew chill on them, and the hard stones bit them, and they shivered. Out of the north, from the black gate through Cirith Gorgor, there flowed whispering along the ground a thin, cold air. In the
Yes.
morning. Yeah? What?
Oh, you paused. I thought you were going to say something.
I was just kind of soaking it in. Like, the entire payoff depends on going through this experience with Sam and Frodo.
Yes.
It sucks.
Mm-hmm.
In the morning, a grey light came again, for in the high regions the west wind still blew. But down on the stones behind the fences of the Black Land, the air seemed almost dead, chill and yet stifling. Sam looked up out of the hollow. The land all about was dreary, flat and drab-hued. On the roads nearby, nothing was moving now. But Sam feared the watchful eyes on the wall of the Eisenmouth, no more than a furlong away northward. Southeastward, far off like a dark standing shadow, loomed the mountain. Smokes were pouring from it, and while those that rose into the upper air trailed away eastward, great rolling clouds floated down its sides and spread over the land. Speaking of volcanoes, I watched favorite riff track moments from Jurassic World 2, 1, whatever. And that was fun. But there's a bit where Chris Pratt is, for whatever reason, incapacitated, paralyzed, and lava is creeping towards him, and the audience is supposed to feel a great deal of oh shit, is he going to make it or is he going to get burned? The lava is a foot away. A fucking foot. And I'm like, this isn't how physics works.
No.
Like,
once you're within a foot of lava,
burn him. It's burned. He's already dead.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's the floor's lava is not a real representation of how lava works. You don't have to touch it.
You don't have to touch it. You do not have to touch it. And it drove me slightly nuts because, yeah, I'm like,
Indeed.
You couldn't have. I mean, I guess it's Hollywood physics. On the same note that people walking away from explosions never get all the hair burnt off the back of their heads.
Well, maybe they do, and the camera just doesn't show us.
It's one of the moments in The Hobbit, the book, that really mattered, was Smaug gets mad and blows fire up the tunnel, and Bilbo's hair gets all fried off and doesn't grow back for some time. And I'm like, thank you.
Yes, that is how fire works. Yes, good.
That's how hair works. Like,
also that.
Yeah.
Cleaning. La 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 la.
Smokes, eastward. A few miles to the northeast, the foothills of the Ashen Mountains stood like somber gray ghosts, behind which the misty northern heights rose like a line of distant cloud, hardly darker than the lowering sky. Sam tried to guess the distances and to decide what way they ought to take. It looks every step of 50 miles, he muttered gloomily, staring at the threatening mountain. And that'll take a week if it takes a day with Mr. Frodo as he is. He shook his head, and as he worked things out, slowly a new, dark thought grew in his mind. Never for long had hope died in his staunch heart, and always until now he had taken some thought for their return. But the bitter truth came home to him at last. At best, their provision would take them to their goal, and when the task was done, there they would come to an end, alone, houseless, foodless, in the midst of a terrible desert. There could be no return. So that was the job I felt I had to do when I started, thought Sam, to help Mr. Frodo to the last step, and then die with him. Well, if that is the job, then I must do it. But I would dearly like to see Bywater again, and Rosie Cotton and her brothers, the Gaffer and Marigold and all. I can't think somehow that Gandalf would have sent Mr. Frodo on this errand if there hadn't been any hope of his ever coming back at all. Things all went wrong when he went down in Moria. I wish he hadn't. He would have done something. But even as hope died in Sam, or seemed to die, it was turned to a new strength. Sam's plain hobbit face grew stern, almost grim, as the will hardened in him, and he felt through all his limbs a thrill, as if he was turning into some creature of stone and steel that neither despair nor weariness nor endless barren miles could subdue. With a new sense of responsibility, he brought his eyes back to the ground near at hand, studying the next move. As the light grew a little, he saw to his surprise that what from a distance had seemed wide and featureless flats were in fact all broken and tumbled. Indeed, the whole surface of the plains of Gorgoroth was pocked with great holes, as if, while it was still a waste of soft mud, it had been smitten with a shower of bolts and huge slingstones. The largest of these holes were rimmed with ridges of broken rock, and broad fissures ran out from them in all directions. It was a land in which it would be possible to creep from hiding to hiding, unseen by all but the most watchful eyes. Possible, at least, for one who was strong and had no need for speed. For the hungry and worn who had far to go before life failed, it had an evil look. Thinking of all these things, Sam went back to his master. He had no need to rouse him. Frodo was lying on his back with eyes open, staring at the cloudy sky. "Well, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, "I've been having a look around and thinking a bit. There's nothing on the roads, and we'd best be getting away while there's a chance. Can you manage it?" "I can manage it," said Frodo. "I must." Once more they started, crawling from hollow to hollow, flitting behind such cover as they could find, but moving always in a slant toward the foothills of the northern range. But as they went, the most easterly of the roads followed them, until it ran off, hugging the skirts of the mountains, away into a wall of black shadow far ahead. Neither man nor orc now moved along its flat gray stretches, for the Dark Lord had almost completed the movement of his forces, and even in the fastness of his own realm he sought the secrecy of night, fearing the winds of the world that had turned against him, tearing aside his veils, and troubled with tidings of bold spies that had passed through his fences.
Ha! Neener, neener.
Oh, yeah? Troubled, are you?
Good. You should be.
The hobbits had gone a few weary miles when they halted. Frodo seemed nearly spent. Sam saw that he could not go much further in this fashion, crawling, stooping, now picking a doubtful way very slowly, now hurrying at a stumbling run. "I'm going back onto the road while the light lasts, Mr. Frodo," he said. "Trust to luck again. It nearly failed us last time, but it didn't quite. A steady pace for a few more miles, and then a rest." He was taking a far greater risk than he knew, but Frodo was too much occupied with his burden and with the struggle in his mind to debate, and almost too hopeless to care. They climbed onto the causeway and trudged along, down the hard, cruel road that led to the dark tower itself. But their luck held, and for the rest of that day they met no living or moving thing, and when night fell they vanished into the darkness of Mordor. All the land now brooded as at the coming of a great storm, for the captains of the West had passed the crossroads and set flames in the deadly fields of Imlad Morgul. So the desperate journey went on, as the ring went south and the banners of the kings rode north. For the hobbits, each day, each mile, was more bitter than the one before, as their strength lessened and the land became more evil. They met no enemies by day. At times, by night, as they cowered or drowsed uneasily in some hiding beside the road, they heard cries and the noise of many feet or the swift passing of some cruelly ridden steed. But far worse than all such perils was the ever-approaching threat that beat upon them as they went, the dreadful menace of the power that waited brooding in deep thought and sleepless malice behind the dark veil about its throne. Nearer and nearer it drew, looming blacker like the oncoming of a wall of night at the last end of the world. There came at last a dreadful nightfall, and even as the captains of the West drew near to the end of the living lands, the two wanderers came to an hour of blank despair. 4 days had passed since they had escaped from the orcs, but the time lay behind them like an ever-darkening dream. All this last day Frodo had not spoken, but had walked, half-bowed, often stumbling, as if his eyes no longer saw the way before his feet. Sam guessed that among all their pains he bore the worst, the growing weight of the ring, a burden on the body and a torment to his mind. Anxiously, Sam had noted how his master's left hand would often be raised as if to ward off a blow or to screen his shrinking eyes from a dreadful eye that sought to look into them. And sometimes his right hand would creep to his breast, clutching, and then slowly, as the will recovered mastery, it would be withdrawn. Now, as the blackness of night returned, Frodo sat, his head between his knees, his arms hanging wearily to the ground, where his hands lay feebly twitching. Sam watched him till night covered them both and hid them from one another. He could no longer find any words to say, and he turned to his own dark thoughts. As for himself, though weary and under a shadow of fear, he still had some strength left. The Lembas had a virtue without which they would long ago have lain down to die. Your machine noises are happening again.
Oh no, that's me trying to wipe down my table. Sorry.
Oh, okay. It's like
Yeah.
How'd it go?
They're cleaner. I think they're doing all right. I need to do some rust removal, which I can't do with rubbing alcohol.
No.
And also, it turns out that rubbing alcohol ate through the finish on my table a little bit. So I hope it stops being sticky soon.
Yeah. Sorry, been there. In my case, it was actually mineral spirits, but yeah, been there.
Mm-hmm.
So, empathy. Feebly twitching, got some. He still had some strength left. The Lembas had a virtue without which they would long ago have lain down to die. It did not satisfy desire, and at times Sam's mind was filled with the memories of food and the longing for simple bread and meats. And yet this way-bread of the elves had a potency that increased as travelers relied on it alone and did not mingle it with other foods. It fed the will, and it gave strength to endure and to master sinew and limb beyond the measure of mortal kind. Thank you for giving us that as an explanation for why the hobbits don't just succumb to the evils of their plight. They're muted.
I said die of scurvy.
Exactly. Yeah, plenty of vitamin C in Lembas.
One bite is enough to fill the stomach of a full-grown man.
But now a decision must be made. They could not follow this road any longer, for it went on eastward into the great shadow, but the mountain now loomed upon their right, almost due south, and they must turn towards it. Yet still before it there stretched a wide region of fuming, barren, ash-ridden land. We're this far from the end of a section. Shall we finish this section?
Let's finish the section, because otherwise we're not going to remember where we left off.
That's just it. Water, water, muttered Sam. He had stinted himself, and in his parched mouth his tongue seemed thick and swollen. But for all his care, they now had very little left, perhaps half his bottle, and maybe there were still days to go. All would long ago have been spent if they had not dared to follow the Orc road. For at long intervals on that highway, cisterns had been built for the use of troops sent in haste through the waterless regions. In one, Sam had found some water left, stale, muddied by the Orcs, but still sufficient for their desperate case. Yet that was now a day ago. There was no hope of any more. At last, wearied with his cares, Sam drowsed, leaving the morrow till it came. He could do no more. Dream and waking mingled uneasily. He saw lights like gloating eyes and dark creeping shapes, and he heard noises as of wild beasts or the dreadful cries of tortured things. And he would start up to find the world all dark and only empty blackness all about him. Once only, as he stood and stared wildly round, did it seem that, though now awake, he could still see pale lights like eyes, but soon they flickered and vanished. What could it be? Bugs?
Bunnies?
Bunnies!
Bunnies! It must be
Must be
bunnies!
bunnies! Or maybe midgets?
Yeah, I don't like that line. That didn't age well.
It didn't, no.
No,
I mean,
it's an offensive word.
it is.
Mm.
But, or maybe little people doesn't sound as... Yeah. I mean, you're not supposed to like her for that or for the hatred of bunnies.
Well, no, indeed. But I'm just like, those are those are the kinds of lines that I change when I re-sing it, because I don't like to say words like that.
Yeah, I forget. I'm just as bad with, well, okay, now that I'm thinking of it, the G word that means the Romani people. Like, I've always liked it. On this side of the Atlantic, it's a word that isn't racist, but we're a global community now, so we have to pay attention. I'm sorry I
Yeah,
used the M word.
that is
I
okay.
won't do it again.
I mean, I say that's okay, like I'm the person who needs to tell you that. I'm just saying that line always makes me
Look,
like,
see? The scab
Whoop.
is gone. What's that?
Berg. I thought you had a scraped knee. I didn't realize that was your eczema.
Yep, that's the eczema. How do I even turn? Yep.
Oh, honey.
Yeah. Oh, not that flexible yet. Started doing yoga with Adrienne again, like 3 days ago, because I use Seb's room and he's in college. I don't like doing living room yoga because then the dogs climb on me.
Indeed. Yes. I have a hard time with exercising on the floor on account of the cat bites me.
Yep.
It's a problem.
She's like, why are you down here and not loving me? Hello? Arr!
I think it's more like the floor is my territory. We're gonna have a fight. Because if I push her off, she kind of sits back and goes,
Good Come on, fight with me.
Anyway, on that note, I'm gonna go see if I can get the tension assembly off this thing and hopefully not break my screwdriver again.
Yeah, no breaky screwdriver, no breaky assembly. Enjoy getting that thing cleaned up. I can't wait to see how it goes. Take pictures.
I'm doing my best to remember to do that. Yes.
Pictures or it didn't happen.
All right, darling. I
Yep.
will see you next week.
Okay. I love maybe not next week. I'll keep you posted. The next 2 weekends are Imbolc weekends for various pagan communities.
Sure.
Oh.
Yep, keep me posted. We'll figure it out.
Okay. Cuidado.
Llamas.
Bye.